welcome, Pastor Bramnick.
Thank you.
So where are you today?
We are in Fort Lauderdale in the great state of Florida that we clearly look like we have a victory for President Trump. We're very excited with how things are progressing.
Amazing. I also have, let's see, I have someone else popping up over here. Let's bring him on as well. Mr. Koenig, how are you? Can you hear us? I can't hear you.
I can.
Oh, there we go. Great.
You can hear me?
Okay, we have a great panel here. Where are you calling from?
Outside of Washington, D.C.
Wow, Washington, D.C. Okay, we have all the battle states over here. Not battle states as far as swing states, but as far as contention is concerned, there's a lot going on. I know they built a wall around the White House, an unscalable wall because of security concerns. So, and Florida, I can't imagine how crazy it is right now. Pastor Bramnick, what are your thoughts as far as this is how I started off with Kade in the beginning of the hour about possible eruption of violence as a result of the elections, however it goes?
Yeah, we are concerned. There are Marxist and progressive liberal groups. There's a shut down DC group. There was a Zoom call with a lot of these groups, some of which working with the government, some government officials to bring chaos, anarchy, and violence to Washington, D.C. They want to shut down Washington, D.C. The mayor, who's very liberal of Washington, D.C., gave a permits to Black Lives Matter, which is a Marxist organization, for all of Washington, D.C. So we were just there for a conference praying for the elections in the National Mall with Lance Wallnow and Mario Murillo, Jeremiah Johnson, and they were boarding up hotels, and a lot of the retail establishment were from South Florida. It looked like they were preparing for a hurricane, but they were preparing for the violence on the streets that they claim they're going to do, not just in Washington, D.C., but other cities throughout our nation, no matter what the results are.
So from Washington, Mr. Koenig, what are your feelings as far as that is concerned, as far as potential eruption of violence? What's going on in the streets right now? Are there rallies going on? Are there people that are in the streets? Do you have a personal concern for your security?
No, we're actually in Northern Virginia. I'm not sure at this point. The nice thing about tonight, it's been fairly peaceful. The votes are coming in. Everything seems to be going fairly orderly. No one knows for sure the outcome. Possibly there'll be a blessing that maybe a state or two won't be known for the next day or two. It seems, from my perspective, it's fairly orderly. And like Mario said, we're very concerned about the violence. I think if it, praying and hoping that the election will continue to look like it's moving smoothly, look like the votes are counting. We had a beautiful day for turnout voting throughout the country. It was pretty remarkable. We had great weather coast to coast. So, it's trending very much like last in 2016. It's Trump is gradually gaining his voters, who a lot of them went to the polls today. They're starting to count those votes. And again, I'm just hopeful that possibly the delay in the actual outcome, I think will still work to Trump's benefit, but I think hopefully it will calm things down a little bit. But I'm afraid we're not going to be able to, we're still going to have that intensity. We're still going to have that response. We're just hoping it's not going to be as bad as some of us were concerned about initially.
Yeah, Kade was speaking about the idea that God, this is an opportunity for us to look at God as an independent, that he's not a Republican, he's not a Democrat, and that regardless of how the election results come out today or within the coming days, that we will be able to have introspection and to understand that God is really the one that is pulling the strings.
Absolutely. I think from the groups that I've prayed with the last couple of weeks, obviously we want conservative president and vice president and the wonderful evangelical cabinet that President Trump has and the advisors that he has around him, but we're also praying for God's sovereign will. And we just know he's in control. I don't think there's any doubt, not to speak for the gentleman on this call, but there's no doubt that God's in control of this situation. He has a divine plan. For us as evangelical Christians, God's time clock is the state of Israel, which a lot of us have a lot of interest in. And we think from that standpoint, too, President Trump, Vice President Pence, Secretary of State Pompeo will be the right people to have in place for the state of Israel. And I'm hearing the same thing from you guys.
Kade, I'm gonna ask you I'm gonna pull you off right now because I have some other people coming on. I thank you so much for joining us, and for me, starting it off 5 o'clock in the morning here in Jerusalem, that was very helpful for you to start us off this morning. Please continue to watch, and again, we thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to bring on, we have Earl Cox on, so I'm going to bring him as well. Mr. Cox, how are you today?
Well, I'm doing just fine, and very good morning to you.
Thank you so much. It's almost 6 a.m., or I should 5:36 a.m. here in Jerusalem. I've been up all night with my trusty coffee, and it's nonstop excitement. I'm not sure that it's good excitement because we have, and I'd like to open this up to everyone here on the panel. When you have such division in the country, where half of the country is convinced that it's going to go one way and half the country is convinced that it's going to go the other, and of course that's what the concern of violence is. What does that mean for the country as a country? No matter who gets in, how are they going to wake up tomorrow and continue with their lives when they think that whoever is leading now the country is leading us to disaster?
Well, first of all, I think when they wake up tomorrow morning, I doubt very seriously if they'll have all the results in by that time. They're still coming in, as you very well know. And both sides, as I've traveled across the United States in the last 6 months, have been saying there's going to be an overwhelming victory for Trump. It's going to be no sense to carry on any more than we're doing right now. In fact, my son works for Mr. Trump, and he travels quite frequently with the Trump campaign. And he said, "Dad, we've got this thing in the bag." Well, I don't think it's in the bag by no means whatsoever from what I'm seeing right now. I've been involved in 5 presidential campaigns, and this is probably the most bizarre one that I have ever been involved in. And for all of those prognosticators who have predicted that Mr. Trump is going to win or Mr. Biden is going to win, I think they're all biting their nails right now because there is no answer to it at the moment. I think some of the states that Mr. Trump needs to win is down in Texas. That is a very, very important one. I think he probably will pull that one out. Of course, Wisconsin, you're looking at, North Carolina, a state that I'm very familiar with. But these are states that he's going to have to pull out in order to take and win those 270 electoral votes. And he's pretty much sweating this one right now. I don't think he's as confident as he was earlier today when he talked.
Yeah, we were saying earlier that, and I just repeated myself, that half of the country was 100% convinced that Trump was going to get in by a landslide, and the other half was convinced that Biden was going to take it by a landslide. So perhaps that is what is raised all of the emotions here in this election, because everybody thinks that their candidate is going to win by landslide, and it's clear at this that it's not going to be a landslide on either side.
Yeah, I don't know that we can say that. The president won Florida by a great margin, and it was the Hispanic vote. I'm part of the advisory board for Latinos for Trump. Georgia looks like he's going to win. North Carolina as well. It looks very positive for Ohio. So we don't know yet that it's not going to be a landslide. We are concerned with Pennsylvania. We don't know if there's going to be a sufficient margin. And then we have the problems with having to count those votes later. So I don't know. I agree with the panelists that we may not know by the end of this evening, but I don't know that we can rule out a landslide for President Trump at this time.
It would really surprise me if that were to be the case. Of course, I would love to see it happen. I'm a Trump supporter. I've always been a Trump supporter. I believe in the very things that he's running on, abortion. He's taken a very strong stand against that. And of course, the evangelicals are rallying behind him because of that. But as you will remember, during the 2016 election, there were 25 million evangelicals that did not vote. And I'm wondering whether they're going to come out and vote this time, or whether we're going to see evidence of that.
Well, why do you think that they did not vote? Is that because of the character of Mr. Trump that was pulled through the dirt in 2016? But now I'm wondering, with all the dirt that's being brought out on Biden, whether they see that maybe perhaps he's the best of two evils.
Well, I don't know if I put it that way right there, but in any event, I think probably the evangelicals in 2016, they saw Trump as some person that was not necessarily associated with them in terms of their philosophy, because he's a very tough guy. His language was not that of evangelicals, so they were a little afraid of him. And now they've become to see, well, this guy, he does profess to know Jesus Christ as his Savior. They see he just has a little rough talk around the edges, and they've come out this time. I really believe that the evangelicals are coming out and have come out so far. I believe today is when they really came out. I think the pre-election, when they were going to the ballots to cast their ballots, I think probably we saw more people that were voting then that were for Biden than what's happening right now. Those who went out today on the polls and stood and voted, they were definitely for Trump. And we can see that as those numbers come in. Unfortunately, I believe we've lost a lot of the Hispanics, a lot of the minority blacks, and a lot of the women votes. And I think that's going to hurt us just a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. Again, being part of the campaign on Latinos for Trump, we are expecting historic Hispanic votes for the president. Florida, it was the Hispanic vote that brought, I think, a 3-point margin in Florida. And Miami-Dade, which is a very strong Democratic city, but it's very majority Hispanics, the margin was much less for Biden. I think throughout, number one, because of the historic economic help for Hispanics, historic unemployment before COVID, and now we're building up because of faith and family is very, very important. And mainly, as Hispanics, we're very concerned about socialism being advanced here, because I was born in Cuba, many in Venezuela, and even Central American countries have this progressive leftist globalist agenda. So we're going to be very surprised. We're going to have I believe, the strongest Hispanic support for Republican in any election. And we're going to see a significant amount of African Americans voting for the president. Obviously not a majority. We may get 15%, 18%, but definitely more than the percentage, because our president has been the best president for Hispanics and African Americans.
I think most people would agree to that right there. And I'm not disputing your calculations on what's going to happen. I'm only saying what I have seen as I've gone around the country traveling myself. I've talked to a lot of Hispanics. I've talked to a lot of blacks. I've talked to a lot of women. And as a whole, I don't think that they're as excited as the evangelicals are that didn't vote last time that are coming out this time.
Well, I think also there's such a distinctive difference in the two candidates. For what Trump and Pence stand for, especially look at our courts, look at the judges. I think Judge Barrett could not have been a better time to have her appointed to the Supreme Court, have her approved, and have her put on that court. That was just incredibly good timing for President Trump. And the 200 or 300 judges is very significant, as you know, Earl and Mario, how important that is to all of us. I think it's, and also the secret voter. I think even, really in the last half an hour to 45 minutes, Earl, I'm definitely seeing a similarity to what happened in 2016, where the momentum is building.
Absolutely.
Great numbers just before I got on tonight. I'm glad for the extra half an hour because a lot happened in the last half an hour. So I think we're encouraged there. And as we know, Earl, a lot of us have been hoping for that secret Trump voter. And I think they're definitely coming out. And we're starting to see those numbers. The numbers are phenomenal. And we just hope it'll continue to trend this way through the night and over the next couple of days.
Yeah, well, yesterday, I think that it had almost, 100 million votes that have been cast. And now
that's right. A little over that.
So you're talking to a lot of people. I mean, we're breaking a lot of records. There's absolutely no question about it. But one thing that I think that a lot of us are starting to forget about is that United States Senate and the House. Those are races that we have to win as well as the presidency. Because Mr. Trump, if he does win this, and let's hope he does win it, he's going to have a Senate that stands with him, and he's going to have a stronger House of Representatives. And those races are starting to look in favor of the Republican Party at the moment in the Senate. I know Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. I mean, he was in a very tough battle with Harrison, and now he's come out. They project him to be a winner.
Oh yeah, big win tonight.
Right, that was a big win for Mr. Trump as well. He'll need him. He's a very good, strong voice for the Trump administration. So we're seeing more than just a presidential election here. We're seeing that we've now got a United States Supreme Court that's conservative and it embraces our principles of what we believe in the Bible and in the Torah. We also now need to have the Senate and hold on to the Senate. And the House, I doubt very seriously if we'll take over the House, but gain some seats in it.
Also, this election, for our viewers in Israel couldn't be more important in addition to all of our issues as Christians, the importance of Israel. I don't think we've had in the history of our nation a stronger pro-Israel president than President Trump,
right.
Far exceeding any of our expectations, starting with fulfilling the promise to move the embassy to Jerusalem, Golan Heights, breaking up the Iranian deal. And when you compare the Republican Party platform for the president, I had the honor of working with David Friedman and Jason Greenblatt on the Republican Party platform, the strongest conservative platform on Israel. The Democratic platform and their positioning on Israel is not only not pro-Israel, it's pro-Iranian. I mean,
and Palestinian.
Pro-Palestinian and pro-Iranian. Biden will reestablish that horrendous deal that Obama did with Iran. Biden is already reaching out to Palestinians to push the two-state solution, which, quite frankly, pretty much with these 4 years, the president has done a superb job in with his administration and his team in marginalizing the Palestinians and starting these peace accords. We're now up to 3 plus many more standing in line without referencing the Palestinian Authority. And there's other things in the Peace for Prosperity plan to continue marginalizing the Palestinian Authority and hopefully having a better moderate leadership for the Palestinians that we can go to the table with. So all of that will be scrapped. And I believe even the accords, I'll finish with this, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain are petrified of a Biden administration because they're going to go back to the Obama policy of shunning the moderate Gulf nations and working with our enemies, the PA, Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah.
Absolutely.
You're right on target. You just now hit a home run, grand slam home run with what you said. If Biden is elected, everything that's been accomplished through the Trump administration over the last 4 years, as far as the Middle East is concerned, will be taken and completely torn apart. And don't you think Iran, China, North Korea, South Korea, don't you think all of these
Turkey,
Turkey, Erdogan, don't you think they are praying that Biden gets in there? So we stand to lose more than just a president of the United States, we're going to lose the world is going to lose a president. This has supported a good democracy in the Middle East, and he continues to do so every day that I know of, that I've seen. And Bill, you can attest to that right there. You're in Washington, you work with him very closely.
Absolutely. I tell you, Earl, and I like to say when I speak to audiences is President Trump, is what Mario was saying, he has done more for Israel than all our presidents combined.
Wow.
It's extraordinary what he's done. I mean, no one's even close to what President Trump's accomplished for the state of Israel. And you are absolutely right, Earl. Putin and Xi from China and Erdogan and Khomeini are just, they can hardly wait to deal with a Biden White House. In other words, run him over. And that would be a very, very dangerous, if in fact he was elected. I don't think so at this point, but if in fact he was, it would be very, very dangerous for Israel, for the United States, for NATO, for Europe, and a lot of other peace-loving countries around the world.
Iran actually tweeted out today that they support Biden over Trump, which is quite a compliment. I was just saying in the last segment, it's like getting an endorsement from Al Qaeda or from Hezbollah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure how good that is, but my concern, and we discussed this a little bit in the last segment, is that for your average American, foreign policy is not the main concern, and many Americans, most presidents, first of all, wait until their second term to really concentrate on foreign policy. Usually they're working more on domestic policy in their first term. President Trump, as he's done many times before, has changed all the rules and has focused very much on foreign policy when it comes to his first term. And I'm wondering how much an effect that has had on the election, this re-election today.
Bill, you want to take that one, or you want me to try to?
Yeah, I'll throw some out, Earl, and I'd love to hear your input, obviously, as well, but just from your perspective, Earl, with your relationship with the state of Israel. Biden, Harris, their whole team would be, I mean, I'm sorry, I just want to call it what it is. It'd be a joke. I mean, the enemies of Israel, the enemies of the United States, would look at this administration and run him over. Yeah. I mean, and unfortunately, Joe's not the guy that he used to be, and it wasn't that solved in the first place, but he's slipping, and he's weak. He's weaker now than ever before. And Vice President Harris, oh my gosh. I think the enemies of the United States would just would cheer this for days and weeks and months, and at the same time put a bullseye on America. It would not be good for us.
Well, I'll tell you, we could sit here and paint a scenario that would be unbelievable if Biden were to be elected. You've got a vice president that is a much younger person than he is. And of course, if something happens 2 years from him now, guess who comes in and becomes the vice president? Yeah, who becomes the president of the United States? And wouldn't that be a disastrous thing that would happen? Have a socialist sitting right there in the presidency of the United States, sitting there in Washington, D.C., the most liberal, most socialist member of the United States Senate running this country?
It'd be terrible.
Yeah. And even Biden would be influenced by the socialist wing, which would be devastating for our economy, for small businesses, family-owned businesses. And sure. President Trump has shown pre-COVID and post-COVID his ability to really strengthen our economy to the lowest levels for unemployment, especially amongst Hispanics and African American, et cetera, median income. So even on domestic issues and prison reform, immigration policy, and some of what he's done, like prison reform and infrastructure in inner cities, is not typically a Republican issue. The president's willing to do the right thing, whatever the cost and whatever the party. So I do not believe that the average blue collar worker for sure will not do better. And I think they know it. And then on law and order, this thing that we talked about, shut down D.C., we've yet to hear Biden say, no, we don't want this rioting happening on the streets. They seem to be, if you look at Democratic governors, like in New York and in Georgia, in California, they seem to be encouraging this type of conduct, defunding police and allowing lawlessness in our streets, which is right out of the Marxist, communist, socialist playbook. So that is not going to help the average person domestically.
Well, it's absolutely absurd that you think about defunding our police department when we have riots going on left and right here in this country right now. And that's the socialist attitude, and that's why we hopefully should stand stronger in our conservative views about protecting this country and electing people to office that will take and stand up for our police departments. Not
passive, not domestic pacifists or pacifists when it comes to dealing with the threat of our international enemies.
Absolutely.
And which socialism is, as Mario is saying. It'd be just passive.
No question.
And we don't need passive now. We have a dangerous, obviously China is becoming a much greater threat, the South China Sea with Taiwan, also what they're doing in the Middle East with Iran, with Iraq. It's time for a strong leader. And if we don't have a strong leader in Washington at this particular time, it would not bode well for the United States, as well as our NATO partners in Europe.
Right.
Also,
so clearly,
another dubious endorsement for Biden was Maduro, the president of Venezuela. So if you just see all of the nations endorsing him, I think we have an idea of what he stands for.
Absolutely.
So we painted a great picture of what could happen if Biden gets in. Let me take it a step further and say, what would be your reactions if Biden actually gets in? What are you going to say to your followers if Biden gets in? What's the next step?
Well, as far as my followers concerned, I don't know if I have that many followers, but in any event, I'll tell you what I will be doing. I will be fighting as hard as I possibly can to project the truth to as many people as I can and the community that I represent. But my one concern is Israel. I have a deep love for Israel and her people. And I guess if I have anything on my agenda, it will be to work toward trying to get the administration to pay more attention to Israel. And those who would fight against it, I would fight against them every way I possibly could. With my resources, with my abilities, whatever I may have in my ammunition box, I'll fight against them. I'm not referring to gun ammunitions, but I'm referring to ammunitions of my experience and et cetera.
Any other comments?
Yes, it's not exactly on point, but Franklin Graham at a dinner we were at with the president 2 years ago said, the day we lose President Trump as president, there will be an unleashing of persecution against the church that we have not seen in America before. And I believe there will also be an unleashing of anti-Semitism that we haven't seen. We see what's happening in New York City with the mayor, with the governor, singling synagogues and Jewish schools. I believe that it's just a latent thing. Number one, the church was what voted President Trump in. So it's the Christians' fault. And even though most of the Jews in America did not support the president, all of his pro-Israel policies, I believe we're going to see an unleashing of anti-Semitism that we haven't seen before in America. And it really shifts everything. The 8 years of Obama were bad. I think what we would have under a Biden-Harris administration will be much, much worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're okay. It was interesting. Just before I came on, the Chinese yuan is starting to sell off. And I just got a text from a friend of mine said even the odds, I don't like to quote Las Vegas, but the odds in Las Vegas now are 91% of a Trump victory. So we're trending in the right location. I think more than anything else, just what we saw before it came on is favorable, hopeful, and it's answered prayer because we've never had so many Christians, as Mario mentioned, and Franklin, and all these amazing groups have been praying for this election, and as well as have had evangelicals turn out like never before. So I just give the Lord credit for, if this is pulled off, I give him credit for having mercy and giving us some more time.
We have another guest on, Dr. Jim Garlow. We're going to bring him on as well. Welcome to the show, Pastor Garlow.
Thank you. Good to be on with you, my friend.
So I know you were on the White House lawn during the UAE signing of the Abraham Accords. What are your thoughts today as we go through this re-election? And we were just discussing it. Biden gets in. Do you think that he would pull back and revert to what we had in an Obama administration? Would he bring back the embassy to Tel Aviv? Would he be agreeing to the Iran deal again? Would he be basically going back on everything that Trump has succeeded in doing in the past almost 4 years?
Exactly. He's made it clear that he would, within the first 100 days, undo everything he possibly could. Nancy Pelosi even commented on that within the last day or two, that we're going to immediately undo. They would literally start undoing it within 24 hours as much as they possibly could. They've been very clear about that.
Okay, it's the end of the hour. Everybody is welcome to stay, and we love what you have to say. So whoever has to go is welcome to go. I just don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. If they want to stay, you're welcome to stay. What you guys are in the United States right now? I'm here in Jerusalem, so of course it takes some time for the news to travel overseas. So to tell me what's going on right now. In the polls, the exit polls, what's going on in the actual results, what has been called, what hasn't been called, and what are we looking at on the map today?
I'll tell you exactly what came in about 45 seconds ago. Exit polls from the New York Times. Exit polls suggesting that Trump got 55% of white votes, 11% of black votes, 31% of Latino votes, 30% of Asian American. Overall, 1/4 of non-white voters supported Trump. In each case, men were more likely to vote for Trump, women less likely to. So that is brand new information.
Great.
How does that
news.
compare to 2016?
The black vote is definitely up. Latino vote is up. He did take a little bit of a hit with suburban, and he did take a hit with women. Women vote dropped. At least that's the information as of now.
Right. That's right.
That could change in analysis in the next 24 hours. But right now, that's the areas that he did drop in. Rural vote, he just took virtually everything. We were very encouraged to see that black vote just continue to crawl up slowly, little by little, and to hit the 11%. That was at least in the conversation I was around. That 11% was actually a target. That was the goal they wanted to hit. And Mario, who's on with us, was very significant leader in the Latino vote, turning that out. He got more Latino pastors to the White House than anybody did. And so Mario played a huge role in the impact on that.
Bill, did you find it interesting when the Amish people of Pennsylvania all showed up in the White House and Trump welcomed them? Amish people never participate in politics. And I can remember very vividly seeing hundreds and almost thousands of them when I was in Pennsylvania watching what was going on there with rallies going on for Trump. It is some of the people they were at the White House. You saw them. They were.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they're incredible. And also the nuns the other night that were behind Trump at one of the events with their Trump paraphernalia on. It was incredible. I don't know. It just is this secret Trump voter, which you all have been hoping for, is a reality. And there's a lot of folks that it's just amazing how God orchestrated this whole thing. Even just the timing of this, the votes, the whole 9 yards. We're living in an amazingly unprecedented time, but nonetheless, you could really see God's sovereign hand on this as he orchestrated this to happen the way it has within sequence. It's been pretty amazing. And Jim and Mario and Michelle and Rosemary, all these incredible prayer efforts. I mean, that has been remarkable. The level and the amount of Christian prayer. I know our side got a lot of people going to God about this, and obviously that's the difference maker for us.
Josh, there 4 years ago, none of us, including Donald Trump, believed he could win. At least the honest people admit that. And it wasn't until 9 or 10 in the evening we saw a sudden change. 9 o'clock, I was at the right across the street from the Supreme Court. I was by the U.S. Capitol, and we were watching it from there. And we saw this shocking change. Now, this one was a lot different. because up until about 3 weeks to 4 weeks ago, it looked pretty rough. The last month really changed. What shifted it had to be these massive prayer rallies. Just
Absolutely.
started with the return.
Shabbat Teshuvah. We got on God's calendar and repented at the right day.
And
That's right.
But as the voting started tonight, me of little faith, the first as they started coming in, I should have called Mario and William and Earl. They would have encouraged me. But I started going, this is looking rough. I called Johnny Moore, one of the top guys of the campaign. I said, Johnny, I've been at this since 1956. I'm older than all you guys. I know every campaign since I was 9 years of age. This one is hard. My stomach muscles are tightened into a knot. I can't take this anymore. Give me 30 seconds of your time and make my day. And he did. And within 30 minutes after that, we started seeing a radical shift taking place. In fact, it's so much, I want to turn over to CNN and MSNBC and now start watching them as if they, we haven't won it yet. Now, we haven't won it. I don't want to be over
That's right.
in a ridiculous way. We really have a ways to go yet. But this is unbelievably the shift that is in the midst of occurring. And if we could have an honest election, we could deliver it on through tonight and when the counting is done in Pennsylvania. If we have an honest election, I think we can see this thing through.
What can we expect in a second term for the president? You guys all have your hand on the pulse. He's done an enormous amount, especially as has been mentioned for Israel. What can we expect him to continue to do, and maybe some surprises in a second term should he be reelected?
Before you ask that question, I did just want to bring in the prophetic word over the president that he has been called as a modern day Cyrus. We heard that word, and even Benjamin Netanyahu mentioned that. And the work of the modern day Cyrus was not completed. And we needed a second term for the fullness of what God will do with the president. So it did take the prayer and the mobilization, but I think we're going to see the fullness of that. We work on the Latino Coalition for Israel in identifying Cyruses in Latin America, and Daniels and Jeremiah's working with them. And the nations are looking. The Democratic, pro-Western, pro-Israel nations are looking for President Trump to be that strong leader. Right now, the threats from China, the things that we're concerned about are pretty striking. We don't know what's going to happen after the election, what China can do. And China is trying to take a lot of these nations and pull them to that area. Yeah. So I think that we're going to see more alliances between democratic nations in Latin America and Europe and so forth with a strong President Trump. And that's why we really continue to pray to retain the Senate and hopefully win the House in such a margin. I don't know if we can at this stage, but there's still work to be done to complete what the president has started.
Are you capable of understanding what it would be like to have Biden as the president of the United States of America? And with these other nations, as much as they hate Israel and want to take over, as long as you have a powerful president like Trump sitting in Washington, D.C., they are not going to make any moves toward Israel in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said,
an article.
Go ahead, Jim.
I just read an article a little bit ago on saying what on earth is the difference between a Biden and a Trump presidency. And I simply went country by country by country. All those countries that would be traumatized to lose Donald Trump. It would be traumatic for so many countries. Mario, by the way, we're not going to be able to take the House. We
lost the House.
We're losing some seats in the House. I got a text here a moment ago that potentially Florida may have been called. I don't know. Oh, Florida supposedly has been called.
Yes,
for Trump.
CBS, I think, was CBS.
Oh, wow.
On no other station will you find that. So we have.
Yeah, Trump's up 400,000 in Florida.
Thank you, Mario.
Up 400,000 with 2% left to count. Man, that is incredible victory.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Incredible
goodness.
victory. Well, it's like what Earl said about that. I think when the challenge, Josh, is President Trump, Erdogan, Turkey is going to be a big issue. China, Putin's cagey. That more than likely will be an issue as well. But we also need that Senate. We really need at least one of the two houses. We're probably going to lose 3 or 4 in the House at this point, more. But that Senate is so crucial because, China and Russia and Turkey have to laugh at the United States political system right now. Our biggest threat is our two-party system because of the other party. So that's another area of prayer for our president. If Trump is officially reelected going into this next term, he has some serious international challenges, and the other battle he'll have is the domestic battle with COVID-19.
Isn't it ironic how President Trump has come this far with a news media that is so biased against him that, everything he does is wrong. He does nothing right. And yet the Lord God Almighty has taken and brought this man to this point where he could conceivably be reelected the president of the United States, the greatest nation in this whole wide world.
That's right.
He takes on the Democrat, the media,
yes,
the academic, Hollywood,
yes,
and quite a bit of business, and a lot of the entertainment and the sports as well, piled onto a cabal. And I don't know how he withstands every day. By the way, not so good news. Arizona is looking very bad right now. Now, it's not called yet. We still have to nail down Minnesota, Michigan, or Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Those
Ohio.
Ohio.
I think Minnesota has been called, if I'm not mistaken, Minnesota has been called for Biden.
Oh, it has. Okay.
I think it has.
That's so
Okay.
sad.
Josh, I do have to sign out.
Okay, thank you very so much for joining us, and thank you for all that you've done to bring out the votes in Florida, and it's been an incredible success. So thank you very much. Thank you from Jerusalem. Thank you from the Israeli people.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you.
Shalom. Okay, so we were discussing. I have a question for you. It's a little bit of a heated question, and I just say this a little bit cynically, coming from Israel, where we see some of our leaders all of a sudden around the election start to talk more about God. They use a term Be'ezrat Hashem, with God's will, and they do this in order to try to bring in the religious vote, but it's questionable whether they actually believe those terms. We see that President Trump has mentioned on his campaign trail the guy above, and how this is all about God. How much of that is hype and how much of that is real, and is he sincere?
He was led to Christ by Paula White, and as he went on his growth and development, he deepened in his spiritual understanding. He has matured enormously in the love of God, love of God's word. He is still new in his journey, but I'll just give you the difference between someone like what we faced in the past. George Bush, the elder, generally respected evangelicals, but we were always at arm's length. George Bush, 43, the younger, liked us and in one sense was sort of a part of us, but never fully, and he disliked us. Donald Trump is intrigued by us. And out of that has come a love of God and a love to do what's right. I'm going to quote somebody who knows him extremely well. When this person said to me, when I'm alone with Donald Trump, he really wants to do what is right. He would not have instinctively have known he should love Israel and the Jewish people. He would have known that, but somehow God has shown him that.
His grandchildren told him he has to.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
His Jewish grandchildren told him he's asked to. So.
Yes.
It's been staggering to watch him make the right decisions. And of course, as you are well aware, there are two issues that got him elected 2 years ago primarily. And that was the Supreme Court as it relates to the issue of abortion. And then secondly, Israel. And the biggest applause lines Donald Trump would get across America was when he talked about his support of Israel. Yep. That's how intent it is in the heartland. And evangelicals are passionate on this and watch it every day. It's not like we back off and say, okay, everything's fine. No, we watch what is happening every day. I don't know what the percentage of evangelicals is going to be in this election, but it appears to me that it may be holding around that 81% mark again. Mm-hmm. We don't know for sure, but it appears. And the number one issue is the issue of abortion and Israel. those two issues. So he has instinctively, it's moved from him being intrigued with us to him really wanting to do what God would have him do. I think he hears from God in his own challenging, rough way, unfiltered way. This is a guy who wants to do what's right.
I think that the Israeli people and its leaders are starting to recognize that the evangelicals are their friends. We are starting to concentrate now on what we have in common more than what we don't have in common. And we are working together on programs that never has been done before. And over the last 20 years, I've been working with the Israeli people. When I first went there, there was a lot of suspicion of, you're coming here to get us to believe like you believe. Anymore, when I'm talking with Israeli friends and talking and meeting with the Israeli leaders, they want us to help them. In fact, yesterday I just released a story that the Knesset is welcoming the evangelicals, and they want us to come there and help them out during these times. And I believe that for the most part, the evangelicals have gone there and helped Israel with the economy. They are trying to help them and work with them in ways that they've never done before. So I see the two groups coming together and focusing on the things that we do have in common, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We have that in common. And so with that said, I'm beginning to be enthused about how it's growing, the relationship between the two religious groups.
Bill, any comments about the sincerity of President Trump when it comes to religion?
Both Jim and Earl made great points, and it really has been fascinating. Man that doesn't have a strong biblical or evangelical background, he's just done a lot of things right. I know he appreciates the evangelical support that he has, his advisory group. I've been at the White House for 20 years. George W. Bush was appreciated and appreciated Protestants and Catholics, but President Trump likes evangelicals, and he's surrounded himself with evangelicals. He's probably got 7 or 8 that are on his cabinet. And then again, what's really important is he's made a lot of correct decisions. And, that's, his gut, maybe it's the God of Israel putting it on his gut to do the right things. But like I said, before Jim and Rosemary were on the phone, before on the call, he's done more as a president of the United States for the state of Israel than all our presidents combined. It's extraordinary.
I'm always amazed by the fact that he has embraced Orthodox Jewry, which doesn't make, the evangelicals, you can make an argument that they are an enormous power within the United States, and getting their votes is essential in helping an election. But the Orthodox Jews are perhaps less than 10% of Jews in America, and every other president has always catered to the Reform and conservative and unaffiliated Jews because they knew that's where they're going to get the most of the votes. But he has embraced the truth, and he has embraced Orthodox Jewry, which has always amazed me and shown me, for me, that's a sign that he cares more about truth than just votes.
And I think David Friedman's had a lot to do with that. What an incredible ambassador. I don't think we've ever had a better ambassador to Israel than David Friedman. And he's an Orthodox Jew. He speaks Hebrew. Jason Greenblatt, I think the same thing. And I think he got a perspective from both them. And also Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State Pompeo, who speaks of the San Remo Agreement, who stood up and said that these settlements are not illegal based on law. We studied it for a year, all the way back to San Remo. So those 2 or 3, plus Mike Pence being a great Christian Zionist, and Mark Meadows, he's been blessed by having some really good, very fundamental Christians, fundamental evangelical Christians, and 2 Orthodox Jews around him that really have helped mold this attitude and stance for the state of Israel.
I want to say that most evangelicals do not want to be conversionary toward the Jews. They want to come and help bless Israel, bless the Jewish people. And this is what our president is doing. He's coming to fulfill Israel's purposes, Israel's desire, Israel's acknowledgement that Jerusalem is the capital, that the Golan Heights is their sovereign territory, that Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem belong to the nation of Israel. And so he's a great example of serving the Jewish people and God's purposes for them, and not to change Israel, but to help Israel fulfill what she desire and is called to do.
And deeper than that is we come also not to teach, but to learn. We are really drawn to Rabbi Tully Wise. We're drawn to Rabbi Yehuda Glick.
Yeah.
People like that are heroes among the evangelicals.
Yeah.
They teach us foundational things that we do not know. When we had the privilege of co-sponsoring with Rabbi Tully and Rabbi Yehuda a Bible study in a Tanakh study in the Knesset, and someone said to me, "Oh, you Christians think you can come teach us Jews something?" I said, "Oh no, you misunderstood. We're coming as learners." And in those meetings, it has been so glorious. There's been a hunger for truth, and the Jewish rabbis have instructed us in some remarkable things that have been an enormous blessing. We're witnessing things in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years that we wouldn't have thought conceivable 15, 20, 30 years ago. And that's the work of God. And Donald Trump is very much in the midst of that as the Cyrus to Israel, who loves Israel, as do 81% of the evangelical, perhaps all the evangelicals, but 81% who voted for him.
Pastor, you and Rosemary have said it so eloquently, and I appreciate what you're saying. But I can remember when I first went to Israel, you're talking about learning from the Jewish people about the biblical things that I believe in and how they have taught me. I didn't even know where the Temple Mount was, and I was standing looking right at it, and my assistants and aides said, "Earl, it's right in front of you." Well, fortunately, I know where the Temple Mount is, but you're right. We have learned so much from them. There's a relationship that's been developed between the evangelical and the many Orthodox as well, as Orthodox have supported Trump, as you very well know, just recently. The Admar Slita of Sheret Vishnetz has said something just recently about how important it is to have a president that would take and stand with the state of Israel. So you're right, and I just commend you for what you just said.
I don't know if you can see the comments that are coming in, but we have one from Rabbi Tullis that is saying that he is so grateful for Rosemary Schindler Garlow and Dr. Jim Garlow for the insider perspective. And he also writes that he thanks Earl Cox and Bill Koenig for their fascinating insights. So our group is definitely, our staff is watching. And also we have another editor that mentioned Adam Berkowitz, who mentions that David Friedman's middle name, I don't know if you know this, is Melech, which means king. And he's also he is a Kohen, so he is actually from the priestly this descent of Aaron. So we have a lot going with us, a lot of spirituality here in Jerusalem, and it says in the passage that from Jerusalem, from Zion, will come the Torah that we will teach the nations, and we hope to be able to live up to that very high calling.
My husband taught young adults 2 nights ago, and he had slides in Hebrew explaining Hebrew words and the significance of their meaning from Bereshit. And the young people, when they got that, they jumped out of their seat and began applauding because it made their whole faith make sense. And it was phenomenal. All at once, it clicked, and they were so excited that they understood God's word and had a real foundation for their faith and could know what they believe in. It was amazing. So thank you for feeding us so we can feed our children.
And I told them, I said, everything you just heard me talk about, I have learned from Jewish rabbis. And all I was doing was going through analysis of the Hebrew words in Genesis 1, 2, and then a little bit of 4. And I walked through that, and they were blown away by the truth. That is something that I don't think we can explain. Why is there a hunger globally? Millions of evangelical Christians in any country you go to, they're driven to come to Israel to learn from her. And that scripture you just gave is literally being fulfilled before our eyes, unlike any time in Israel's history.
Absolutely. Bless Israel and I'll bless you. I mean, and we've seen that happen in our daily lives, all through my daily life. At least I see it. God has blessed those who bless Israel. I'm talking about,
and that is what the prophecy says, that lo ra'av lelechem, there will not be a hunger for bread or a thirst for water, but there will be a hunger for the knowledge of God, and that's what we are seeing today. And I'm hoping that the president will be able to be reelected. Let's pull it back into the election over here. So we will continue to see these miraculous decisions and policies that are being implemented, both domestically and internationally. So what's going on? Let's get back to the election. We see that Trump is, I'm just getting a message now, is likely to win Ohio by a larger margin than 2016. Is anybody else seeing that? I don't know who.
Yeah.
We got bad news from Arizona, but I'm glad for your good news from Ohio.
Well, every president, Ohio is if
Absolutely.
you have to pull Ohio in with you, because at 15 consecutive elections, I think Ohio has been there with the Republicans.
Can I ask? We've had so many prayer gatherings on internet and in locations in every state, and especially in our capital, for President Trump's reelection. And we know the rabbis were praying for President Trump's reelection in Israel. And we so appreciate, that was the greatest encouragement to see the Israelis come out in support. I don't know if there were any for Biden. I didn't ever hear of any, but I was just wondering, all that I heard people of faith were praying for Donald Trump's reelection. Well,
I can tell you here in Israel, Rosemary, that there is an overwhelming support for Trump. I don't know the numbers, but I could tell you that it's very, very high.
I think it's almost 70%. Almost 70% is what I saw, I think, in Jerusalem Post.
Indeed, that's
right. I would think it's even higher than that, but very, very overwhelming. And that's, a lot of that is due to the fact that he has concentrated so much of his first term in helping Israel. There was someone who posted over 100 different policies that were made that were pro-Israel in his first term. And it's just, it goes on, and the list goes on and on as far as what he has done for Israel. That's why I'm so curious to hear, to see what is going to continue in his second term, because he's done so much in his first term. It's hard to imagine that he's going to be able to beat that in a second term.
Well, I like your positive attitude. What he's going to do in his second term. Boy, I just want to hear you talk more and more and more, because that confirms what we all want.
Did you hear what Rosemary said?
Oh, we need to help you build a third temple.
Absolutely. I'm not sure
that'll be the new Trump legacy.
Well, that was Cyrus's legacy, and there have been also rabbis here that have compared President Trump to King Cyrus, and definitely that's where the redemptive process is leading us towards a third temple. I don't know exactly how the president or, for that matter, our own prime minister plays into that role, but we're definitely seeing us getting closer and closer by the day.
Yes.
I'd like to see you get closer and closer and pick up Judea and Samaria and Jordan Valley too. And I think with Trump being reelected, I think that's a good possibility of happening sooner than later.
Yeah, that's an intense. You hit a real nerve center with evangelicals. We want Samaria and Judea to be fully understood as a part of Israel, the Jordan Valley, East Jerusalem, and that issue settled.
No foreign entity, no foreign state in the midst of it, no division, but complete sovereignty, 100%.
So some of the right wing here in Israel has actually complained because of what happened during the Abraham Accords, where a decision was made in order to at least postpone the sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. Any comments about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That basically froze the extended sovereignty effort. And unfortunately, and I write about this, is that the bargaining chip to normalize relations was stopping the extended sovereignty and also the eventual support of two states. And a lot of us didn't particularly care for that aspect of the Abraham Accord. We appreciate the fact, we appreciate that Israel wants to make peace and have peace with the neighbors, the Sunni Arabs, who need Israel as much as anybody else right now because of the Iranian threat. But at the same time, the bargaining chip was part of Judea and Samaria and those 132 settlements that needed to have extended sovereignty over them. So that just stopped that process. So that's the downside.
Josh, this might be difficult for those in Israel to grasp, but we as evangelicals are so fiercely committed to obey God's word, to honor and bless Israel, that Samaria and Judea they don't have to be annexed. They already belong to Israel. God said that. They're not taking somebody else's land. And for Israel to be able, and the Jewish people to be able to exercise sovereignty over that is as intensely felt by us sitting in cities across America as it is by the Jewish people who live in Judea and Samaria. Now, they're under much greater threat, obviously, because we're out of harm's way being over here. But
I don't know about that, but considering what's going on in the United States right now,
that's true.
I think that we're here.
We feel with great intensity this issue, and to the extent that as you talk to your Jewish brothers and sisters and your friends, let them know that Bill Koenig and my wife and Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann and numbers of us, there's quite a few people, Mario, there's been an enormous amount of conversation about seeing the exercise of sovereignty go forward. And that is very much on the front burner of conversations among all the evangelicals I run with, or the ones that are most discerning on this. We want to see Israel be able to exercise its appropriate God-given sovereignty over those areas and resolve that issue.
And I think you're going to see more and more of that in the first quarter as we go into it. The evangelicals moving forward after this election. Everything's been concentrated on this presidential election and everything else. And this Judea and Samaria has been put on the side. But I believe once this is all over with, that we're going to come out in great forces and demand that Israel has sovereignty over those properties.
And there is, as you all know, there's the San Remo agreement. I mean, you have a legal right to the land from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. I mean, it's a legal document. And that's why Secretary Pompeo said that Israel has the right to develop settlements. They're not illegal and that was based on San Remo. So you have the law. And when the Arabs had all that oil and all that influence, they were able to convince the United Nations to go forward with the resolutions that put pressure on Israel to give up a large part of Judea and Samaria, which was part of the peace process, as you know, Josh.
And Josh, from roughly, I'm going to say April or May on, people like Bill or my wife, Congresswoman Bachmann, have focused heavily on educating and articulating evangelicals about the 1920 San Remo agreement, the resolution. And so to get that out, and so people like me and us, we're Facebooking that San Remo, Balfour, to make sure that people understand we don't want young evangelicals to say, well, Israel's violating international law when they in fact are not.
Even in The Hague.
Yeah, and we had visits to The Hague, and met an attorney that many people should know, Andrew Tucker, who's written a wonderful book on this. And we've tried to get that information out to as many people as possible, that Israel has not just the Bible, God saying it, that would be enough. But the fact is, legally, the nations agreed that this land belongs to the Jewish people and to Israel, period.
And it never did belong to the Palestinians.
And I think that President Trump has done an amazing job with his group that he's brought together, including Mr. Greenblatt and Jared and Avi Berkowitz. They've done an amazing job of showing that, basically disproving what everyone has said prior to his presidency. Everyone has always said that in order to have regional peace, one first has to make peace with the Palestinian people. We have to have internal peace before we can start dealing with our neighbors. And he's disproven all of that. He's shown that we can have regional peace. And, if the Palestinians want to join, as Prime Minister Shir said, we believe in peace for peace. So if they're interested in peace, we're interested in handing them peace back. But we're not willing to do any land territorial concessions for that.
Right.
I don't know if you want this update. This kind of breaks into the flow, so stop me if you don't. But on a sobering note,
you are the flow, so go for it.
A picture's just been sent to me from Washington D.C. 150 black bloc Antifa. I don't know if it says black or block here. It looks like it's been Antifa activists are marching toward the White House right now. And then they showed me a picture of them, and they're screaming obscenities, which I will, and they're saying something even bizarre. Blank Trump, blank Biden, no more presidents. This is bizarre. They have gas masks, weapons, and some have shields. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is I think our president and the police, and I suspect maybe military might be called up, are prepared for this. Washington, D.C., as you probably have already discussed, is boarded up and even has unscalable 15-foot high walls in an extended perimeter around the White House. Maybe you already discussed that issue before we came on, but that is current, apparently just now happening based upon the note and the picture that came with it.
And you're concerned of our safety.
You guys are the best, Josh.
Here is a video. There's a video right now. I won't keep it up there.
That's great, Jay, because Josh was asking about that a little while ago. If we had any details, we didn't have at that time. So this is all new. Josh was asking about that. So.
Talk about how all our major cities are boarded up: Los Angeles, New York. Here,
all the Democratic-led cities.
Exactly, and I tell you what: if Trump was defeated, there wouldn't be any problem in these cities. That's the farce of the whole thing. We, the conservatives, the Christians, the Republicans, would not be destroying cities over the loss of an election. No, not at all.
Israel goes through this all the time. They're always being threatened. And when we moved the embassy, they said it was going to cause World War III. Of course, it didn't. So you're used to it. We need your help right now to be encouraged.
Our help is through prayers, and we're here at the center of the world in Jerusalem at the time. I live on the Mount of Olives, which is right across from the Temple Mount, and we have a tradition that all prayers that happen anywhere in the world have to first come to Jerusalem, to the Temple Mount, before they rise up to the heavens. In fact, for Jews, 3 times a day we pray, and we always pray in the direction of Jerusalem for that reason. So for our prayers are much closer. They're not international. They're a local call over here. So we're happy to put in a good word, and we hope that things go well. On the other hand, I would like to discuss the idea of potential violence and whether there are people that are even concerned of a civil war. Is that a real real threat, a real concern?
Well, we hear that. I've been hearing that now for the last month and a half, that if Trump is reelected, there is going to be a civil war. I'm not too sure I agree with that right there. I think that we can stop it in its tracks if Trump is elected, because I don't think he'll sit back and allow anything like that happen. I think he will exercise whatever force is necessary to stop this foolishness.
That's right. He will.
No, I don't want to say that.
Rosemary and I were at the White House for President Trump's acceptance speech at the RNC, and when they got surrounded by violent mobs, and we were ready to leave at the east entrance where we had come in, and they said, don't go out there. So we went to the west entrance. Fortunately, there were way less radical protesters there, but they were out of control. They would come up, get within inches of your nose, and scream vile things about Trump, and then call you racist over and over and over. On the east side, where a lot of people exited, it was far more dangerous and more difficult. Now, I think that surely our president is fully prepared for that, and they're ready to deal with this. Now, how expansive in cities all across America, they have boarded up everywhere. They have boarded up and prepared. And so we'll see. There's been a tremendous amount of prayer on coming against the amount of violence that has been threatened recently. I don't think we're going to have a civil war. I think we've been in it. 2020, I call it the uncivil war. We're in a very uncivil war right now. And I pray it doesn't get any more violent than it is, but we're a deeply divided nation between the truth of God's word and the anti-biblical individuals. That's what it's come down. It used to be Democrat versus Republican, used to be right versus left. It's changed. It's not the grandfather's Democratic Party anymore. This is completely radicalized. And so it's now good versus evil. It's right versus wrong. That's what we're facing here. And that's where the Civil War is. So this is not two parties at all. It's not a partisan issue. People want to try to label it that. It's the people who believe in God and those who hate God.
That's right.
You spoke about
That's
intimidation. I'm wondering whether there was a concern of voter intimidation, and what about the integrity of this election? The President Trump has tweeted a number of times that he's concerned, deeply concerned about the electoral results because of different tampering that's been going on. I know where I came from in Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, they sent over 50 federal monitors, including to Allegheny County, because of concerns that there's something going on behind the scenes. Have you heard any news as far as problems with the elections this time around?
Mountains of it. It boils down to this: one, multiple ballots sent to homes, like Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann. She and her husband, 2 people in a house, they got 12 ballots. Massive amount of potential for fraud. Number 2, drive-through voting. Houston, unfortunately, did that with over 250,000 votes. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court didn't turn it down. They should have. My own family, my sister and my mother, my 99-and-a-half-year-old mother, when she went to vote, wanted to present proof of who she was. And they wouldn't touch it. They said, because of COVID, we're not going to touch anything. Just write your name and where you live. And so they voted without any proving at all. That's right here in my community. My sister, my brother-in-law, and my mother. This occurred yesterday. That is fraught for abuse. Then there's the potential alleged sophisticated computerized, if you'll Google the words hammer and scorecard, those are 2 potentially computer capacities alleged that could manipulate the vote after people have voted. And then you add that with the hatred for Trump, which is so strong that frankly the other side will not stop at anything that they could do. So the moral and ethical foundation of the integrity of the election could be severely challenged in the same way. And I was a young child in 1960. I was in elementary school when Mayor Daley held back the vote in Cook County in Chicago until he could find out where it was. And then suddenly all these votes appeared for JFK, John Kennedy. And we could have the same thing, only being Philadelphia this time, a strong possibility that Philadelphia could play that role. If we came down to Pennsylvania, suddenly votes would just miraculously appear out of Philadelphia. So that is reason for concern. I've always felt Donald Trump could win a fair election. I don't know if he can win a fraudulent one.
And technology definitely has a big part in this. I know that there was a Senate hearing recently about this, that many of the social media platforms, whether it be Twitter or Facebook, were censoring the pro-Trump or the conservative views. And as of last night, I know that many of my colleagues in the media had their accounts suspended on Twitter and on Facebook for no seeming reason. And I'm wondering if you've heard anything as far as manipulation of information, which is probably one of my biggest concerns when it comes to affecting this election.
I sent this article out on a link yesterday, 2 articles about what I used to describe the potential for computer manipulation of the election. I got up this morning and both of them were blocked. Didn't show. And it's kind of a badge of honor anymore to be blocked by Twitter and Facebook. And so people brag about it. And they did that to us if we would put anything favorable towards hydroxychloroquine. So sometimes we just would go in and write hydroxychloroquine multiple times just to bait them to see what Facebook would do. It's irrational, the level of control. And we will have to have these monopolies will have to be brought to a halt and broken up, as we've had to do in the 1920s, 1930s in America, in order to restore and make sure that they do not usurp governmental authority.
I guess my follow-up question is, what happens if Biden wins this election, at least according to the media? Will the other side be claiming that this was manipulated? No one wants to take that one.
Yeah, I don't want to go there.
Let's hypothetically say Biden is announced the president of the United States, and this is a big concern during one of the debates where President Trump at least insinuated that he would not accept results in which he would lose because he believes that the election was being tampered with.
Well, I don't think it would be. I was going to say, Jim, I don't think it'd be. The Republicans would not do what the Democrats would do, or the violence that would Antifa and some of the other groups. We would not resort to that type of violence. We'd probably take it to the court. We could, the main thing is if we did take it to court, I think we'd have it well documented. We're not going to just say it without facts. The other side seems to be just saying whatever they want to do and not having to necessarily prove it, and then going and destroying public property. So that's a distinct difference. And hopefully we won't have to be put in that position where we have to defend this. But I can tell you what, the Republicans have attorneys everywhere, all over the country, monitoring these votes very closely. They've got a handle on it, the best I know, under the circumstances. But, obviously there's some things that Jim mentioned that have been a concern to us, but hopefully it won't be hopefully it won't stop the actual election of Trump.
Josh, what we have on the Republican side is we have the disadvantage of having to obey God. Our moral and ethics will not permit us to knowingly, intentionally lie, cheat, steal, etc. I'm not suggesting for a second that every Democrat lives contrary to that. I'm not suggesting, but there are enough in that umbrella of that party who feel no compulsion towards obeying the ways of God and have no fear of God and are willing to do anything. And that's what makes it very difficult. Our founding fathers said a democracy could not survive unless we're a people of the book, of the Bible, of God's ways. And so we're being tested as a country on that very issue after 244 years of existence.
Well, I guess that just reinforces my question. If you believe that the election was won because of lying, cheating, then how do you respond to that?
Like Bill said, with facts, facts, truth, investigation, legality. The attorneys will play a key role. Not only are both sides are severely lawyered up. There are lawyers everywhere, ready to and watching everything. But we really only have our greatest value. What we offer is truth. And so we have to function within the framework of that.
And many people feel Biden doesn't even qualify to be president based on the evidence of the laptop of his son and what he had been doing throughout his career in taking in great wealth and making these alliances with our enemies and betraying our nation. We don't understand how he could even qualify to be a president after that.
Well, I hear that he has brought on counsel Hillary Clinton to teach him how to get rid of emails. So maybe she's helping him out.
Oh my goodness.
Not the only wise thing he's done. In terms of getting talent, yeah, she would definitely know how to do that.
As an observer of this process, as I indicated earlier, since a young age of age 9, I'm shocked as we have watched the radical shift in the Democratic Party and its eliteness. And if you do an analysis, for example, of the language or words in the two platform, one mentions God repeatedly, the other one mentions God once. The difference in the word analysis in the two platforms is absolutely staggering. And the Democrats had many values in common with Republicans until you get 1980, 1990. Bill Clinton was still defending marriage in 1996 in September, signed the Defense of Marriage Act. Harry Truman, a Democrat, the greatest defender of Israel until we got Donald Trump. And FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, appealed to Almighty God in a remarkable 11 or 12-minute prayer in 1944. That's what the party was. And that's why so many
Joe Lieberman, if I'm sorry to interrupt, Joe Lieberman at the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem here. I was fortunate enough to be at that historic event, and Joe Lieberman, I was speaking to before the event, and he said to me that he prayed every day that he would be able to witness this happen. No president before Trump took that jump, and he couldn't imagine that this would ever come about. He's the one that initiated the bill in the first place, but he never thought that a president would actually pull the trigger, and he prayed every day that would happen, and he as a Democrat was thankful to President Trump that he actually made it happen.
I talked to him at the event in Jerusalem in 2018, and then spent time with him talking to him in the White House lawn at the Abraham Accords. So this is a real honor to the legacy of this remarkable man.
But he's a great example of how the Democratic Party has changed over the years, because the Democratic Party are no longer Joe Lieberman's. Now they're more towards Bernie Sanders.
Well, Joe Lieberman had to become an independent. He didn't leave the party simply left him. Ronald Reagan was a Democrat till the party left him. So it's a massive left-hand turn. And it's been pretty gradual ongoing from roughly the 1970s on. But it took a sharp left turn this year that all of us were surprised by, even Joe Biden. He may not have figured it out yet. But AOC and Bernie Sanders, they took a severe left turn like we have seen against advocating socialism,
pro-Muslim,
and anti. For the first time, it used to be all Democrats and all Republicans supported Israel. Eliot Engel was the co-sponsor, a Democrat from New York, of the Israeli caucus, along with Todd Franks, a Republican. That was normal for Republicans and Democrats to come together. But in the recent years, the shift is so severe that at the moving of the embassy, when all members of Congress, 535, could have come, would have been paid for, to my knowledge, not one single Democrat attended that incredible event. Not one. Because Trump did it, and they were so anti-Trump. And then you have, for the first time ever, with Ilhan Omar, you have people advocating openly, embracing a terrorist organization against the Israeli people. This is, and Eliot Engel lost his primary to another radical extremist. That's unheard of.
It's almost like we're experiencing some of the anti-Semitism Jews have known over the years in the persecution that's on anyone who stands for Donald Trump. You can't wear any clothing signifying that, and you have to be very careful who you tell, and you get the most outrageous, inexplicable, violent reaction where people they hate you for no reason and just want to kill you and destroy you. And to me, I said, this is a small bit of what the Jews experienced in Europe during the Holocaust. They were the coronavirus then. They were the plague. They were the entity that the Germans despised and wanted to remove. And for us, our strong stand with Israel, I guess it is a badge of honor to wear that persecution, and to know a small bit of what Jewish people have endured throughout the centuries.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, just to be a devil's advocate here, that there are many people that claim that polarization also happened on the right, and that the Republican Party has shifted what they call the alt-right, that moves far to the right. Perhaps that is created the divide that we have today in the United States, that both parties have polarized to the extremes.
And I would contend the Republican Party has exactly the same view on the sacredness of life in the womb. It's always had the same position it's always had on the sanctity and sacredness of the institution of marriage, the same position it's always had on Israel, the same position it's always had on fiscal responsibility. We could go through the list, and the Republican Party has not veered. It has deepened in its self-awareness of these issues, but it has not changed.
It was started to end slavery too.
It was very involved, and the consequences of that, the Democratic Party, in contrast, you can track each time they have changed a position. Every 4 years, analyze their platform. I've been spending some time on that myself, even this very day. And you watch and you track the radical alteration from the previous, and you go back enough years, and you can see where, as I mentioned a moment ago, Franklin Roosevelt, as a Democratic president, leading the nation in an emotive, powerful prayer, appealing to God for help supernaturally. And then when it came up, Bill will remember this, in the Democratic Party, a vote on God, on whether to keep God in. And they voted to a voice vote, and overwhelmingly, the delegates of the Democratic wanted God's name out. Obama, knowing the damage that would cause, sent his guy back in to do it again. And when he ruled on the voice vote, it was clear they all wanted the names of God out. You could hear it. And he ruled, oh no, we got to keep it in, because Obama knew it would backfire politically for him severely in the election. That's how secularized, hyper secularized the party has become.
So the question I have is how to bring the other half of the nation back towards us. Assuming that President Trump is reelected in the coming days, how are we able to bring in? And this is a question that we have here in Israel, and we have also in America, amongst the Jews in America, most of which are unaffiliated. How are we able to, even if we are able to continue to hold the power, how are we able to embrace and to bring together all the other parts of the society which are not on our side?
Well, I think it's because our president, he's for both sides, and his policies has helped both sides. And this is why many of the minorities have turned towards him, because they said he's the first one that actually did something for us. But we need 4 more years to continue all the great plans that are ready to take place in inner city communities, and to help people in prison get out of prison and get back in a normal, sustainable lifestyle. There's and human trafficking, so many issues. Help the drug problem. All these plans are in the birthing right now and need to continue. And that's what is going to prove to the people when their own personal lives are influenced. And that's what's happened with many who've been in prison and been let out, and other great things have happened to them because of our president.
Josh, I so apologize. We have another interview that we have to be on in just a couple minutes. So I sincerely apologize.
No need to apologize. Thank you so much.
We love you. We honor you. Israel 365 is remarkable. And Rabbi Tully Wise is one of our heroes. We think so highly of him. So it's really been an honor for us not only to be on with you, but to have the relationship we have with you and Israel 365. That means a lot to us.
So we pray to continue this relationship, and that we will expand this relationship, because we believe that it is mutually beneficial to everyone, not only the evangelicals, not only the Jewish population, but for the entire world. This is our goal in this world, is in order to bring us all closer to God, and I think we can do that together in an amazing way. And again, I thank you for joining us today, and I appreciate all of you coming on and giving your incredible expertise on the subject. I'm going to let you go back to whatever sites you're looking at now to check out what you've missed in the past hour. And I thank you all. Any last words? Can I?
I want to thank you for living on the Mount of Olives. I think that's amazing and brave and incredible. And thank you for returning to that.
And you're invited to come here on your next visit. You're invited to come visit. I have a beautiful view outside my window of the Temple Mount, and I would be honored to host you.
Are you where
That'd
the
be awesome.
flag is flying?
Yes, that's right above my house.
Oh,
Yes.
my, that's so inspiring.
Let me just answer. Offer accepted. Offer accepted.
Yeah, amen. Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Josh. God bless you all.
Take care. Be well. Thank you, Bill. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you very much, Josh. See you, Earl.
See you, bye, Bill.